Hey guys, welcome back to more r/JustNo mother-in-law stories. This video is gonna be all about crazy mother-in-laws and the stories are absolutely insane. Let's dive right in. And the first mother-in-law story is titled, "Former mother-in-law used too much salt in her food. I asked her to tone it down, but she refused. So I hit her salt shakers the next time we ate there." So for context, I have suffered from chronic migraines since I was a kid. Something important for every migraine sufferer to know are their triggers. Triggers are the things in your life that are most likely to start a migraine. For some, it may be extreme heat, for others it is stress, and for me it is salt. I cannot have a lot, and if I do, a migraine will start almost right away. Due to this, I can only have Chinese food every once in a while, and I have to be very careful to read labels for sodium content. Migraines hurt like a mofo, but can also send me to the ER, which is expensive. My ex-mother-in-law, I will call her Karen, loved to cook and added too much salt to everything. It did not take me too long to notice that right after eating a meal prepared by her, my head would start beating like a drum. We had dinner with them every Sunday, so my ex went to Karen, explained my situation, and asked her to tone down the salt. But Karen was not happy. She thought changing the ingredients of her food would alter the taste too much. She agreed to cut back, but the very next time we had dinner with them, I went home feeling like my head was gonna explode, and I knew she hadn't. My wife asked her about it later, and Karen said she had originally cut the salt, but after tasting it decided it was not flavorful enough and added it back in. She told my wife that she would not sacrifice flavor for me. So that's the last time we had Sunday dinner there. Well, anyway, months later we had to go there for a birthday party. We arrived early, hours from dinner, so Karen had not yet started cooking. I was in the kitchen getting a beverage and saw her precious salt shaker sitting on the counter. I picked it up, went into the pantry and hid it behind some boxes of cereal. While there, I saw the round refill container, grabbed that and hid it too. Hours later, Karen is cooking and we hear a commotion. She is upset that she cannot find her salt shaker. She goes into the pantry, complaining that she also cannot find the large container either. My wife and I were sitting outside, acting like nothing was out of the ordinary. She ended up cooking all the dishes without salt and complained the whole time about how terrible everything tasted. Karen was in a very bad mood as everyone dished up. Let me tell you, it was not long before they started complimenting her on the food. People were saying it was some of the best she had ever made, and from her face you could see she was shocked to hear that. Several people said to her, "This is great. Did you tone down the salt? You use a lot, you know? This tastes like you used the perfect amount." To which Karen hissed, "It has no salt because I cannot find my shakers." Nobody else was bothered by this, they just nodded and agreed it was amazing. The more they complimented her, the more upset she got. For some reason, she never thought to ask anyone if they had purposely taken them. We ate and then got up to leave not long afterwards. On our way out, we went by the kitchen to take some leftovers home. While there, I pulled the salt shaker and container out, put them in our bag, took them home, and trashed them. It was the first time I had eaten a meal with that family and not gone home with a migraine. And you know guys, that reminds me of actually two super funny situations. The first one was when we traveled to China not too long ago, to Chongqing, which is a huge mega city that not that many people know. And that city is usually known for extremely spicy food, which I thought was not too crazy actually. But what I really enjoyed there was just the simple homemade dishes that you can find in hole-in-the-wall restaurants. And I was aware that Chinese food uses a lot of MSG, but to be honest, I never had any issues with MSG before, at least here in Thailand. However, when we ordered food there, like simple stir-fried dishes, when the food came out, it was literally sparkling like little diamonds. You could literally see the little MSG diamonds sparkling in the light. And even though it tasted great, I do have to admit, after eating too much of that food, you definitely get a headache. And to not make this too long, I will share the second salt-related story later in the video. The next story is titled, "My ridiculous mother-in-law sold my Porsche 911. And yes, it is not Porsche, it is Porsche. So I've done pretty well in my life, and I've also had some very unfortunate events take place that have led me to where I am now, including losing my father in a tragic accident growing up and getting an inheritance from his life insurance settlement. I have a good life and work hard for my money, and it allows me to have a good lifestyle. I decided early on in my life that since life is short, that if I can afford some luxuries, that I should allow myself to have them. After all, our days are numbered. I learned that through my dad's accident. Anyway, enough of the sad stuff, but because of that I own my dream Porsche. It's a Porsche 911 with a sleek black exterior that I keep polished. I drive it often because why leave it parked in the garage when I can enjoy it? A few years ago I met my wife Beth. Beth is a wonderful human who has a kind heart and is always doing something to help others. Beth is the opposite of her mother, so much to the fact that I have occasionally teased her about being adopted, even though she isn't. Beth's father also died when she was growing up, and from what Beth told me, her mother changed a lot after that. Beth, being the oldest child of 5 in her family, was 16 and had already developed a good part of her character by the time her father was gone. He had been someone who was always volunteering and getting involved with causes. I expect that is where Beth gets it from. My mother-in-law, let's call her Karen, has never liked me. She said that driving a Porsche was pretentious and that I should have spent more on my wedding because I could have sold it and drained all my savings too to create an event that was much grander. However, Beth and I had been in agreement. We wanted a nice wedding, but it didn't have to be anything over the top. We figured that we would rather give ourselves a good life that would give us chances to enjoy our home, our surroundings, take some vacations and go on little adventures. What I didn't know at the time was that Karen had been displaying increasingly erratic behavior over the years. Beth later told me that her mother had been borrowing money from her siblings without paying it back, claiming family heirlooms were promised to her and generally acting entitled to other people's belongings. She had also worked part-time at a law office for nearly a decade, handling administrative tasks and document preparation, which gave her access to various legal forms and a notary stamp, though she wasn't supposed to use it for personal matters. We had been on some vacations together while we were dating, but we decided for our honeymoon that we were going to take 2 weeks and travel Europe. We don't have any pets that need to be cared for, and I was not worried about anything in our home for the duration of the time that we'd be gone. Being summer, we didn't need to concern ourselves with pipes breaking from sudden temperature drops or anything like that. I had a comprehensive security system installed with cloud storage backup that keeps footage for 30 days, so I felt confident about leaving everything secure. The honeymoon was fantastic and we made memories that will last our lifetime. However, we got a shock when we got back home. My Porsche was not in the garage anymore. I immediately checked my security system's cloud storage and watched the footage with my wife. We saw that it was her mom who had come to our house multiple times during our trip. The cameras showed Karen using what looked like a spare key to get into our garage. She must have made a copy when she visited before our wedding. We watched in disbelief as she allowed someone to drive the car away. "How is this possible?" asked Beth. "Why would my mother sell something that doesn't belong to her? I know she does not know her boundaries sometimes, but telling me I'm wearing the wrong dress or that you painted the house door the wrong color is a whole different level than selling your car. Well, let's get it right, stealing my car and then selling it. I don't know how she managed to get away with it. She had no right and no authority to sell it." "I will call her," said Beth. "No," I replied. "I want us to go and see her in person. I want to see the look on her face and see how she's gonna get herself out of this." "You're going to keep your wits about you, aren't you?" asked Beth. The look in her eyes was pleading. "I'm not gonna hurt your mom if that's what you're asking," I replied. "I know she can be difficult and I don't know how she could do something like this," said Beth, "but there has to be an explanation. For why she stole my car and sold it without even consulting us? And what did she do with the money?" I said. "I know you love your mom, but you cannot condone what she did. I'm just saying there has to be a reason she'd do something like this. I know that she's become self-centered, but to take something so valuable that she did not even own, I just don't understand it." The 1.5-hour drive to Beth's mom's home was a strained one. Beth and I didn't say much to each other, and to have this be the way that our marriage on home soil was gonna start was devastating to me. All sorts of thoughts passed through my mind, including whether my mother-in-law's crime would drive a wedge into my marriage. By the way, Ripe Stars, if you would be confronted with this ridiculous situation that your new mother-in-law stole your car, especially if it's such an expensive car, what would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. Anyway, I suspected that maybe it was why she had decided to steal the car in the first place. However, taking it and selling it was a whole other level beyond just deciding to borrow it for a few days to scare me. I figured that she also probably didn't know that I had security cameras recording everything around my property. The sun was just starting to go down when we knocked on Karen's door. "You're home," said Karen. "What did you bring me from Italy? A good bottle of wine, I hope." "Mom," said Beth, "I think you know we are not here to tell you about our trip or show you the photos we took or drop off a bottle of wine." "I know no such thing," replied Karen. "My Porsche," I said. I didn't want to allow Karen to play games, especially with Beth. I knew that Karen's change in demeanor had been something that had deeply affected Beth after her father's death. I also knew that my wife had a hard time standing up to her mom. "What about it?" asked Karen. "Really? As if you don't know. You don't even try to deny it. I have all the proof that I need that you stole my car and then you sold it. I want it back and you're gonna do that." "I cannot get it back. It's gone to a new owner. You don't need something that flashy. You should be thinking about making me a grandma and driving a minivan instead of driving around in something so expensive." "And the money you got for it?" I asked. "I suppose you have that for me?" "No," said Karen. "I spent it. I needed some luxuries too." "Like what?" "A cruise ticket for the summer and a new living room and dining room set for starters," said Karen. "And what entitled you to steal my car and then take the money from selling it and spend it on yourself?" "You don't need it," said Karen. "You didn't even give yourself a decent wedding." What I can or cannot afford is not the point of anything here. The point is that you took something that was not yours and stole it. I want that fixed now. "Well, I cannot give you back the money or the car," said Karen, "so just deal with it." "What made you think you could do it in the first place?" I asked. We were standing inside the door, all facing one another. It was an extremely awkward situation. Beth looked like she might cry as I questioned her mom. I felt at a loss for what to do. I wanted to comfort my wife, but was worried after our awkward drive over there that she might not appreciate my touch. "We are family now," said Karen. "That means what is yours is mine. You might as well get used to giving your mom a nice lifestyle." "You're my mother-in-law," I stated. "I have a mother who is living and you cannot take her place." "Prickly, aren't we?" said Karen. "I would have thought that your little honeymoon would have helped you loosen up a little." "Well, how would you feel if someone came into your home when you were gone and took something of yours and sold it?" I said. "And don't tell me that you'd be fine with it because we are family, because I know that is not true." "What could I possibly have that you would want to have? And it's not like you are hurting for money. You can always get yourself another expensive car if you want to." Well, believe it or not, it is not any car that I want, it is that one. Maybe you don't believe in sentimental value, but I do, and I bought that with money from my dad because I thought it was something that he'd be happy that I did. He'd always dreamed of having a flashy car one day and had never gotten the chance. "Nonsense," said Karen. "It's just a bunch of tires, metal and parts. What's so special about that?" "I'm going for a walk," I said and headed out to the door. It was not that I wanted to leave my wife alone with her mother. However, I felt that it'd be better if I could clear my head from the insanity for a few minutes instead of doing or saying something that I would regret and that could drive a big wedge into my relationship with my wife. And by the way, guys, just to quickly interject here, if you would be in this situation, isn't there already a gigantic wedge in the relationship if your mother-in-law steals your car, no matter whether it is expensive or not? Seriously. Anyway, I was doing this for her sake and not my mother-in-law's. When I walked back into the house half an hour later, nothing was solved yet. "I want my car back," I said, "and I want you to figure out how to make it happen. This is not up for discussion." "I cannot get it back," said my mother-in-law, "so accept it and move on." My wife and I drove home in silence in my wife's car since I no longer even had a vehicle to get myself anywhere. While we slept in the same bed, it was not how I was hoping to start our life together in our home. The next morning I called my insurance company to report the theft and started the claims process. They told me I needed to file a police report first, which I was planning to do anyway. I also texted my mother-in-law that I was giving her a week to get things sorted out, and if it was not, that I would then be pursuing matters legally. However, I didn't tell my wife about that when I called an Uber so I could get to work. The ensuing texts from her were not happy ones. I tried to be calm when I called her back and explained that I didn't want to do anything terrible to her mom, but that her mom's actions would not go unpunished and that I felt it was important that her mother learns from her consequences. "My siblings, my aunts and uncles are all calling me up," said Beth. "Some of them think you should just let the whole thing go. They are saying it's just a car and that family is more important. They think that now. But what happens when it happens to them? Or maybe your mom is just gonna start taking whatever she wants from people. What she did to me is no different than stealing a stranger's car off the street. It's not like she just took a picture frame like we liked off the mantle. This is a serious crime and she has to learn from what she did." And I was not just making up some story when I said that the car has sentimental value too. It means a lot to me because of my dad. I thought you understood that. I do understand, Beth said quietly. I'm just scared about what this is gonna do to our family. Well, I'm scared too, I admitted, but your mom crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. She didn't just take something small, she sold my car like it was hers. A few days later, my mother-in-law provided me with the contact info for the buyer. When I called him, he was understandably upset. He had bought the car in good faith and now found out it was stolen. He wanted to know if I was gonna sue him to get it back or if he could somehow get his money back from Karen. I told him that I'd work with him and that he was as much a victim as I was. However, I needed to know how she managed to sell a car that she didn't even have a title to. Well, that was when I learned how far she had actually really gone to take the car away from me. The buyer explained that Karen had shown up with what appeared to be legitimate documentation. She had brought my actual car title, which she had stolen from my home office during one of her pre-wedding visits when Beth had asked her to help organize wedding paperwork stored there. She had used careful alteration with matching ink to forge the title, making it appear that I had signed it over to her. Then she had signed it over to the buyer. She had also brought what looked like notarized power of attorney documents, claiming I'd given her authority to handle my affairs while I was out of the country. Since she had access to notary supplies from her job at the law office, including the official seal she was authorized to use for legitimate documents, she had illegally notarized the fake documents herself. The buyer had done his due diligence by checking that the VIN numbers matched and that the title looked legitimate. He had no way of knowing that Karen had stolen and altered the original title or that she had forged and illegally notarized the power of attorney documents. Honestly, the whole scheme was more sophisticated than I'd initially thought, and that was when I decided that I'd definitely be going to the police and pressing charges. And yeah, ripe stars, would you have done the same in this situation? Would you have pressed charges on your mother-in-law? I think logically, this is the only correct thing to do. And I mean, in this case, it would not even feel bad because clearly this mother-in-law is an absolutely awful entitled Karen. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these daily stories. She had gone much too far, first in forging legal documents and then in stealing the car and selling it out from under me. My wife and I wanted to start a family sooner than later, and I knew if we were ever gonna have a chance at having a solid marriage, we'd need to establish clear boundaries when it came to our belongings and personal life, because my mother-in-law's behavior was not gonna improve down the road. I told my wife what I was doing before I went to the police, and while she was understandably upset, she understood the police took my statement, reviewed my security footage, and examined the forged documents. They said it was a sophisticated vehicle theft case involving potentially multiple felonies. In the end, my mother-in-law was arrested and charged with grand theft auto, identity theft, forgery, and abuse of notary powers. Because of the value of the car and the fact that she had used her position at the law office to commit the crimes, the judge set her bail at $25,000. Even though she owned a house, it had a substantial mortgage and she had already spent most of the car proceeds on her cruise and furniture. She couldn't then come up with the cash for bail and had no family members willing to help her after learning about the charges. We were certainly not gonna bail her out and risk her doing something else or running off. She had to learn her lesson. These actions further divided Beth's family when it came to Karen and me. Some of them still thought I was being too harsh, saying things like, "She's family," and "this will ruin her life." But others, particularly Beth's younger siblings who had dealt with Karen's increasingly erratic behavior over the years, supported our decision. The legal process took about 8 months. My insurance company initially held off on paying the claim since the perpetrator was known and there was a possibility of recovering the actual vehicle. However, after 4 months, when it became clear that Karen had no assets to immediately return the car or pay restitution, they processed my claim and paid out the theft coverage. Karen's trial came up and she was found guilty on all counts. The judge ended up sentencing her to 18 months in state prison with the possibility of parole after 12 months. As part of her sentence, she was ordered to pay restitution of $60,000. She also lost her job at the law office immediately after her arrest when they discovered that she had illegally used a notary seal for personal gain, and she faced additional civil penalties for the illegal notarization. Even though I had received the insurance payout, I still pursued getting my actual car back through the restitution process. The buyer, who had become caught up in this mess through no fault of his own, was cooperative throughout the legal process, and since Karen had no liquid assets to pay restitution, the court began the process of ordering the sale of her house to satisfy the judgment. However, this civil asset process moved much more slowly than the criminal case. Karen ended up serving 14 months before being released on parole, but the house sale and restitution process took nearly 3 years total to complete. Eventually the buyer was made whole and I was able to get my original Porsche back. It had a few minor scratches that weren't there before, but overall it was in good condition. Beth and I decided to go no contact with her mom because it would be what was best for us and any children that we would have later in life. It was a difficult decision for Beth, but she recognized that her mom's behavior had become toxic and destructive. It took some time, but in the months following the trial and Karen's incarceration, my bonds with Beth actually grew stronger and our marriage got better without her mom's poisonous influence. Beth's other family members also eventually came around to understanding the full gravity of the situation. It turned out that some of them had been manipulated by Karen in the past in smaller ways, like she had borrowed money that was never repaid, taken family heirlooms claiming they were promised to her, and generally felt entitled to other people's belongings. They realized that if we had let this slide, it would have only emboldened her to do worse things to other family members. We began having family celebrations without Karen, and even after she got out of prison early for good behavior after serving 14 months, this tradition continued. She tried to contact us a few times, but we maintained our no-contact boundary. The last I heard, she had moved to another state to live with one of her sisters. Beth and I are now expecting our first child, and we are grateful every day that we don't have to worry about Karen's influence on our growing family. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones, and standing up to a toxic family member was definitely the right call for us. And before we end the video, we will read the last funny story from r/petty revenge. This one is titled, "Followed a rude lady around the supermarket with a crying child." This is my mom's story, not mine. My brother as a toddler was pretty difficult to look after, later diagnosed with ASD. One day he was just being a pretty standard 2-year-old at the supermarket, crying because he didn't get what he wanted. My mom was trying to comfort him when an older lady walked past and gave off with, "For goodness sake!" Well, my mom, who at this point is exhausted, fed up, and just trying to get through her weekly shop, snapped. She proceeded to follow this lady around the store everywhere. Any aisle this lady went to, my mom would suddenly need something in the same aisle. Crying toddler and trolley and all, my mom pretended to browse the shelves in the same area. This lady got a third of the way through the store before just heading to the tills and going home. And mom then went about her normal shop. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching, please don't forget to subscribe and I will see you again tomorrow.